There is a certain kind of man the world overlooks. He does not chase the noise, and he does not fill his evenings with bars or crowds or constant company. While others measure life by movement and applause, he finds meaning in stillness and in the quiet hum of his own space. He is not lonely, though others may think so, and he is not hiding, though the world might assume he is. He simply loves staying at home. But what does that really mean, and what kind of psychology exists behind a man who feels more alive within his walls than beyond them? Society calls it introversion or maybe isolation, and some even mistake it for fear or failure. Yet beneath this calm exterior lies something deeper, which is a rebellion against the noise of modern existence. It is a silent understanding that peace does not require witnesses. We live in an era that worships motion, where people who go out and connect and broadcast their lives are celebrated as living fully. Those who stay in are often labeled withdrawn or antisocial or emotionally cold. But perhaps the opposite is true, and perhaps the man who stays home has learned something most have forgotten. He has learned that comfort with one's own company is not weakness but wisdom. The home for him is not just a place, it is a psychological landscape. Every corner reflects his inner world. The order he creates and the chaos he controls and the small rituals that anchor his day are not random acts. They are manifestations of his mind and his need for control and harmony and quiet purpose. There is also a kind of safety here, not from the world itself, but from the endless performance it demands. Outside, he feels the pull to conform, to impress, and to entertain. Inside, he can simply exist, and his thoughts can wander without interruption. His identity no longer needs to compete. To understand this man, we must look at the hidden energy economy, because psychologically introverted men experience energy differently. The world outside, with its loud conversations and crowded rooms and constant engagement, does not fuel them, it drains them. Every small interaction costs a piece of mental currency. Home becomes the place where that currency is restored. Carl Jung suggested that introverts turn their life force inward, finding nourishment in internal reflection rather than external chaos. This does not mean they hate people. It means they draw strength from solitude and from the deep well of inner dialogue. The man who loves staying home is not antisocial. He is selective. He understands that not all connections are nourishing, and he prefers depth over breadth. While society glorifies the man who moves constantly chasing deals and parties and approval, the quiet man moves within. His progress is invisible but profound. In his home he is sovereign, and every object has meaning, and every corner is a decision. The world outside often feels unpredictable and messy and performative. Inside he builds order not out of obsession but out of necessity. Control for him is not about power, it is about grounding. When life outside feels chaotic, his surroundings become an anchor. Psychologists call this environmental mastery, which is the ability to shape one's surroundings to match one's emotional needs. It is a subtle but powerful form of emotional regulation. His tidy desk and his routine and his chosen music form a system that regulates his inner weather. To an outsider, it may look like habit or even withdrawal, but in truth it is therapy. The home is a self-designed world where he can restore equilibrium. We must also dismantle the myth of the lonely man, because the label lonely is often misused. To be alone is not the same as to be lonely. The lonely man feels absence, but the solitary man feels presence. A man who loves staying home experiences solitude as abundance. He does not need the noise of others to validate his existence. Instead, he finds dialogue in silence. His thoughts and his music and his books and his routines all speak to him in quiet harmony. There is a depth to this that modern life rarely allows. When a man spends time alone, he meets himself and he confronts his fears and his memories and his desires. That confrontation can be uncomfortable, which is why most people avoid it. They drown it out with distractions, but he does not. He faces it, and in doing so, he becomes whole. This is a rebellion against noise in an age that confuses activity with meaning. Social media and constant communication and relentless motion have made silence feel suspicious. When someone says, "I just want to stay home," people often hear something is wrong. But maybe something is right, and maybe that man is quietly rebelling against the expectation that life must be loud to be valid. In his stillness, he reclaims something sacred, which is attention. He pays attention to details others overlook, like the sound of rain or the shifting of light through the blinds. This sensitivity is not fragility, it is awareness, and awareness is intelligence in its purest form. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard once said the crowd is untruth. The man who stays home lives by that insight, not out of cynicism, but out of clarity. He knows that truth is rarely found in collective noise, it is found in the quiet space between thoughts. Home is not merely a structure, it is an extension of the self. Every man who loves staying at home has consciously or unconsciously built a psychological architecture around comfort and meaning. The living room becomes a reflection of his mental state, organized, but not sterile. The bedroom becomes a temple of retreat, a place to dream and to rest and to re-enter the world. Even the smallest details, like the chair he always sits in, become symbols of identity. Psychologists refer to this as territoriality, a natural human need to mark and personalize one's space. For the man who loves staying at home, this territory is sacred. It is not about possession, it is about belonging. The home is the one place where he does not have to perform. This reveals the masculine paradox of strength in stillness. Society often tells men to be conquerors, to go out and fight and claim. But the man who stays home has discovered another kind of strength, which is restraint. His masculinity is not measured by dominance, but by discipline. He does not need to prove himself through noise, he proves it through control of emotion and of time and of attention. There is a quiet heroism in that. To choose peace in a world addicted to chaos is an act of courage. Many men who love staying at home carry a deep awareness of their emotional landscapes. They have learned that emotional maturity isn't about suppression but regulation. They know how to sit with sadness without drowning in it. They know how to enjoy solitude without losing touch. They know how to build stability without applause. Often this preference for solitude is born from experience, not avoidance. Some men have been hurt by the external world through rejection or betrayal or exhaustion. The home becomes their way of healing, a quiet cocoon where wounds can close in peace. In psychological terms, this can be seen as self-soothing rather than seeking constant reassurance from others. The man turns inward and he learns to comfort himself to create safety without dependence. Over time, this self-reliance transforms into serenity. His solitude becomes a garden, not a prison, and in that garden growth happens slow and invisible but real. Inside those quiet walls, there is a constant conversation. It is not loneliness, it is introspection. He thinks deeply about things others glance over. He replays memories and analyzes choices and dreams quietly of futures he does not announce. This inward focus is not narcissism, it is consciousness. When you strip away the distractions of society, you are left with yourself. Most people do not know what to do with that, but he does. He listens to himself and he confronts his contradictions and he refines his philosophy of living. That is why his calm can sometimes feel intimidating to others. People who are not at peace with themselves often project discomfort onto those who are. There is a quiet irony in the life of a man who loves staying at home because he is often perceived as trapped, yet he is freer than most. He has escaped the invisible prison of validation. The modern world runs on performance and the need to be seen and liked and approved. The Homebody man does not play that game. He measures his days by peace, not praise. He values time over attention. He knows that freedom is not about where you go, it is about how you feel when you get there. In his space, he is both the observer and the observed. He has nothing to prove and no one to impress and no crowd to perform for. Freedom for him is a quiet morning where he can hear his own thoughts. Many fear stillness because they equate it with stagnation. But to the man who loves staying home, stillness is fertile. It is where creativity and clarity grow. Writers and philosophers and scientists have often found their revelations in solitude. Nietzsche and Thoreau and Newton all understood that insight comes not from noise but from quiet observation. When he sits alone, the man is not wasting time, he is digesting it. He is processing the world and filtering out the meaningless and extracting truth from experience. This internal processing is a core component of what psychologists call deep work. The man at home might look still, but his mind is alive. Yet there is a fine line because solitude can heal, but it can also isolate. Comfort can restore, but it can also numb. A man who loves staying home must stay aware of this tension. When solitude becomes avoidance, peace turns into stagnation. The key lies in intention. Does he stay home to connect with himself or to hide from the world? Healthy solitude is active and it is mindful and it nurtures creativity. Unhealthy solitude is passive and feeds fear and disconnection. The psychology of this man is not static, it is a living dance between engagement and retreat. Over time, his home becomes an autobiography, written not in words but in choices. The colors he picks, and the books he keeps, and the objects he refuses to throw away each tells a story. His home is not an escape from life but a reflection of how he chooses to live it. It is where he thinks and heals and creates and recharges. It is where his truest self feels safe enough to exist without performance. He doesn't need the world to tell him who he is because he already knows. The man who loves staying at home is not a mystery, he is a mirror. He is a reflection of what happens when a human being chooses to slow down in a culture that cannot stop moving. He stands at the edge of modern society like a still figure watching a river rush by. He is calm and deliberate, and aware that the current, though powerful, often leads nowhere. His psychology reveals more about the world than about himself because to understand why he stays home, we must understand what he is staying away from. We live in a culture addicted to distraction where every empty moment must be filled. In that environment, the man who enjoys solitude becomes an anomaly. He is not resisting people, he is resisting pressure. Psychologists call this the stimulation paradox, where the more stimulation society offers, the less tolerance people develop for quiet. The man who stays home, however, has reclaimed that tolerance. He has rewired his mind to feel alive without the constant buzz of validation. He does not crave the quick dopamine hit of attention or approval. Instead, he finds satisfaction in subtler rewards like focus and peace and depth. This makes him in a way more free than those who seem busy living, because he is no longer enslaved by the rhythm of the crowd. There is a psychological concept known as self-containment. It is the ability to derive emotional stability and satisfaction from one's own inner life, rather than external reinforcement. For most people, the self is like an open window constantly influenced by the weather of other people's moods. For him, the self is a house with sturdy walls and open light. The world may storm outside, but he remains centered. Self-containment is rare because it requires emotional discipline. It demands comfort with silence and patience with solitude and a strong inner narrative. The man who loves staying at home is not empty, he is full. He is full of thoughts and ideas and reflections and questions. His inner world is textured and layered and endlessly alive. That is why he doesn't depend on endless motion to feel alive, because his life moves inward. Yet society often reacts uneasily to such men because stillness threatens the illusion of progress. When people see someone who refuses to run with the herd, they begin to question their own direction. His calm becomes a quiet accusation, not through words, but through contrast. He does not flaunt wealth or status or validation. He does not need to prove how busy or important he is. And that in a world built on showing is radical. There is a subtle strength in a man who doesn't chase attention. His detachment unsettles people who mistake noise for value. He doesn't play the social game because he has already seen through it. This can make him misunderstood and labeled distant or strange. But those labels are merely society's defense mechanisms against what it doesn't understand. Solitude to him is not an escape from life, it is an entry into it. Philosophers like Pascal and Emerson warn that humanity loses itself in distraction. Pascal wrote that all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. The man who loves staying home has solved that problem. He can sit quietly, and he can think, and he can simply be. This ability is not trivial, it is the foundation of self-awareness. When you can spend time alone without discomfort, it means you have befriended your mind. You have faced its shadows and its noise, and you have made peace with it. In a way, he represents a modern monk devoted to the spiritual discipline of presence. In psychology, strength is often associated with resilience, which is the ability to recover from chaos. The man who loves staying at home has learned resilience by mastering rest. His stability comes from restoration, not resistance. He doesn't fight the world, he recharges apart from it. He teaches something profound without saying a word. Peace is not something you find outside, it is something you build inside. That is why his silence is not absence, it is construction. Every moment of solitude is another brick in the architecture of his mental fortitude. This kind of man also challenges traditional images of masculinity. The world often expects men to be visible and assertive and loud. But there is a growing realization that quiet masculinity, rooted in reflection, is no less powerful. He doesn't roar, he radiates. He doesn't dominate, he steadies. His home becomes his dojo not of combat but of composure. He learns patience and empathy and self-awareness. These qualities, once dismissed as weakness, now emerge as the foundation of modern strength. This redefinition of masculinity is a psychological evolution from proving one's worth to knowing it. Still, there is a cautionary side to this serenity. The comfort of solitude can become seductive, and too much safety can stunt growth. The same walls that protect him can over time begin to confine him. The home that nurtures him can also limit him if he forgets to engage with life beyond it. Because even the deepest thinker needs movement and experience to stay alive inside. Healthy solitude is balance, a rhythm of withdrawal and return. The man who loves staying home must remember that the inner world thrives best when it occasionally meets the outer one. Ultimately, the man who loves staying at home is not just a person, he is a symbol. He represents the human capacity for introspection in an age of distraction. He stands for the courage to step out of the current and to choose meaning over motion. He reminds us that silence is not a void but a vessel. When we look at him, we are not just seeing a man who enjoys his own space. We are seeing the archetype of self-awareness, a quiet counterpoint to the chaos of collective living. He is a message in human form that being alone can be an act of connection. Connection to the self, to peace, and to authenticity. In the end, the man who loves staying at home is not avoiding life, he is redefining it. He has discovered what many spend years searching for in others, which is a sense of inner companionship. He does not depend on the chaos of the world to feel alive. He has built his own ecosystem of peace, a place where time slows down and meaning deepens. He doesn't fear silence, he listens to it. He doesn't chase company, he cherishes authenticity. He doesn't measure worth by visibility, he measures it by alignment. In his quiet world, he has learned that happiness is not a spectacle, it is a state of harmony. We often think of strength as noise, the ability to dominate and to shout louder than the crowd. But there is another kind of strength which is quieter and deeper and invisible. It is the strength to be content with simplicity. The courage to walk away from what drains the soul. The wisdom to know that solitude is not punishment but privilege. His home is not a retreat from reality, it is the stage where he lives most truthfully. The walls around him do not confine him, they protect the sacred dialogue between his thoughts and his spirit. And through that dialogue he becomes something the world rarely produces anymore, which is a whole man. A man at peace with his choices. A man unafraid of stillness. A man who doesn't need an audience to exist. Psychologically, he reminds us that balance is not found in constant motion but in the ability to pause. The brain, like the heart, needs rhythm, contraction, and release, noise and silence. Without stillness, even joy becomes noise. Without reflection, even success feels hollow. Perhaps the man who loves staying home is not behind, he is ahead. He is living the future the rest of us are too distracted to imagine. A future where presence replaces performance and where being replaces doing. So the next time you see a man who chooses to stay in, who prefers his books and his rituals and his silence, don't mistake it for weakness. It might be strength in its purest form, the kind that doesn't need applause. Maybe he's not hiding from the world, maybe he is simply building one within himself. One that no noise can disturb and no chaos can steal. And in a time when everyone is running, he stands still. And somehow that makes him the only one truly moving.